Good afternoon, everybody. How you doing? As you can see, there's nothing up here because there was nothing here. I'll tell you how this came to be. So first of all, thank you, and I hate you, Anastasia. But we were having a conversation in the little courtyard yesterday, and I bumped into Simon. I've seen him around a bunch. I love him. I always tell you I have the biggest brain crush on you.
Feelings mutual.
But we're having the discussion, and then Sarah came out from the team, was like, "Are you guys speaking?" "No, we're not." Blah blah blah. "Would you like to?" I was like, "Oh," I said, "I'd speak if he does something. I just want to listen to him." And then Anastasia was like, "I heard you." And now here we are. So I'm not going to waste anybody's time, because I'm sure many of you will agree with me, but if you don't know, this man right here is honestly one of the greatest thinkers of our generation. I love how his mind works. I love how he challenges us, how he thinks about thinking. And really, all I wanted to know, and it sort of is, the genesis was yesterday, is what are you fascinated by right now? Because I know you're always working on something, or you're always drilling into something.
Yeah.
What are you fascinated by right now?
Well, it's interesting because the common theme that we've been hearing from all the talks today, which is the passion isn't some manufactured thing,
right,
where you sort of find the passion and do what you're passionate. Passion is an output, not an input. And what we hear is somebody finds an obsession for something, and that then becomes their passion. And the same is definitely true, I'm sure, for you, and definitely true for me. So the thing that I'm sort of obsessing about right now is friendship. There's an entire industry to help us be better leaders. There's an entire industry to help us be better parents. There's an entire industry to help us eat better, exercise better, sleep better. And yet, there's barely anything on how to be a friend. And if you think about all the mental health challenges that so many of us are facing today, whether it's coping with stress, depression, anxiety, addiction, even obsession with longevity, friendship is the ultimate biohack that literally fixes all those things.
It's interesting that you said this. So I've always felt like, I'm not a very superstitious person, grew up very religious. But I do believe in some sort of magic in the universe. And every time I bump into you, I feel like we're thinking about the same thing, but on a slightly different path.
And usually other people are forced to listen to us just talk about that
and here
slightly different
again,
path.
So I apologize. But the reason this fascinated me is because I've been thinking a lot about friendship and what it means. And a friend of mine actually said to me on a trip recently, she said, in successful spaces, oftentimes people will use the word sacrifice. We heard many people, we heard Martin, we had so many people up on the stage saying sacrifice, 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 sacrifice. And she said one of the most powerful things ever to me. She said, when we say we've sacrificed something for our career, we shouldn't be afraid to put a name to who that sacrifice was, because oftentimes it was the people in our lives that we call friends.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know, have you been thinking about that? Like, what is the balance? What is the confluence? Like, how do you think of friendship and then the sacrifice that brings you here to sit with people where you may make new friends or not?
Well, I think definitely for me, and I can't speak for anybody else, but definitely for me, I think the sacrifice was lopsided. And I think, especially for high performers who I think later on in life, you start to realize that network of friends sometimes isn't there because you've sacrificed. The number of us who have canceled on friends because a meeting comes up, because they'll understand, right? And yet the reverse is very rarely true. That we'll say to somebody for a meeting, can we meet on Friday instead of Thursday? Because in my calendar, we wouldn't say it, but in my calendar is a friend. And definitely for me, the times where I have tripped, slipped, fell, hit rock bottom, felt alone, any of those spaces, my work wasn't going to rescue me. And it was by the grace of some higher power that there was always a friend who saw it and recognized it in me, who picked me up. And so I realized that we talk about investing. We talk about, and this is a different kind of investment. You and I were talking about it the other day, which is people are moving in the United States, people are moving from California and New York to Texas and Florida to avoid paying taxes because they want to save time. And yet, where else, I want it to be the reverse. I'm not worried about saving the money, to be in a place I don't want to live.
Right.
I want to live with the people I love, and if it costs more, and by the way, by cost, I mean that maybe I won't achieve that thing, or maybe I'll miss that deadline, or maybe I'll miss that quarter. You know, it's a different kind of sacrifice. We think of sacrifice as always against people, but I can make a sacrifice for my career, for my friends. And it's about striking that right balance. Because your friends will be there for you, your work won't.
Yeah, you see, I love that line. Your friends will be there for you, your work won't. I was talking to a friend about this conversation, and my friend was like, what do you love about Simon so much? And I said, what I love about Simon is this, I feel like you're a truffle pig of like ideas that will shape the world. And what I mean by that is like...
So I'm French.
Yeah, whatever you choose to take from it, take from it. What I choose to say by saying that is...
Thank you.
I love seeing what you're sniffing around in because I believe it's connected to something far greater.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not the truffle, but it's the meal that is now going to influence and the restaurant that it's now going to shape. You have that brain. It's friendship, yes, but why would you care about friendship? Friendship is like, yeah, go out with your friends, hang out with your friends. Why would you care about friendship on like a global scale? What's in it, Simon? What's happening?
So let me take one step back and try and get to an answer. Our understanding of addiction largely comes from an experiment that was done, I think, in like the 50s or 60s, where they put a rat in a cage, and there was one thing of water where it was plain water, and one thing that was laced with drugs.
Right.
And in short order, the rat discovered the drug-laced beverage and loved it, drank more and more until it killed itself. And our understanding of addiction largely comes from this study. There was a guy named, I think his name was Bruce Alexander, who said, hold on, it's flawed. The whole study is flawed.
Oh.
Because rats, like us, are social animals. And we put a rat by itself in solitude. Of course it became an addict. But that's not what you're supposed to do with social animals. So he recreated the experiment where he put, first of all, he put lots of rats in the cage.
No way.
So it was social, community. They put wheels and mazes, and they were having kids and babies, and two waters, a plain water and the drug-laced water. And they could see from the data, they knew which ones, and they all tried enough of the drug-laced water to get addicted.
Right.
But they didn't. Their taking in of the water declined, and they only drank the plain water, which starts to give evidence that if we have close friendships and if we live in community, perhaps we're less susceptible to all addiction. And I know that there's a lot being talked about the addiction of social media, the addiction of cell phones, which is true. Which is true. It is a highly dopamine-producing device, and that it's causing loneliness. And I would argue that if we worked on the friendships, and more important, if we taught our children how to be friends, that perhaps they are less likely to get addicted. And I think...
Yeah, that's...
And I think... So when you talk about what's the global responsibility,
yeah.
we're teaching people how to do everything. You know, we're finding the hacks for everything. The one thing we aren't doing is the old-fashioned, hard, slow thing of making friends.
So, okay, so here's what I've been thinking about. Over the past 2 years, I've been traveling, spending most of my time traveling. And in that time, I've been thinking about how you maintain a friendship, how you keep a friendship and how you build a friendship. And in that, I came to realize most of our friendships, we sort of leave to coincidence. I bumped into this person, I went to the same school as them, we were in the same church, the same company, and that defines our friendships. And to what you're saying now, working on, I realized that no one has ever taught us how to work on a friendship, actually work on a friendship, you know?
And most people think they're good friends. If you ask most people, are you a good friend? Most people would say, yeah, I'm a good friend. And so I said, have you sacrificed that meeting to hang out with a friend? Do you call your friends on their birthday and sing them happy birthday, or do you just put a thing on social media saying happy birthday because you saw everybody else put a thing on social media? You know, when a friend is depressed, do you go over to their house and climb into bed with them and sit and watch movies and eat ice cream all day and be depressed with them? You know, have you done all those things? Have you ever said to your friend, I love you? Not love ya, not love you, I love you. Have you done those things? Are you a good friend? And the way to prove that those things matter has anybody ever done that for you? When you've been depressed, have they come and just sat and been depressed with you? Not trying to fix you, not trying to pull you out of the mud, just been depressed with you. Have they said, I love you to you?
Right.
I learned this from a friend of mine he's a warrior. He's active duty military, multiple tours. He's risked his life to save the lives of others. He is a badass. He is a warrior. And you and I have colleagues and coworkers. They have brothers and sisters. And I remember the first time he called me brother. I remember it was real. Hey, brother, But what really stood out was the first time we got off the phone, and he ended the phone call with, I love you. Again, not love ya, not love you, I love you. And I remember what that felt like. And men definitely, don't do this with each
What did
other.
it feel like?
I felt hugged. I felt safe. I felt that I knew that I could tell him and be anything, and he wouldn't judge me or look down on me. And it was so powerful that I decided to start experimenting and saying it to the people who I loved. And I have some friends who are good people, kind people, generous people, but most would describe them as cold.
Yeah.
They're not warm people. And I remember, I'm thinking of one friend in particular, and I decided to say, I left his house, and I was like, I love you. And I remember watching him sort of be struck by it.
Yeah.
In very short order, maybe 2 or 3 times after I saw him, he started saying, I love you back. He started hugging me in a way that he's never hugged me. I gave him a kiss on the cheek, he kissed me back. That's where the line is. But you live a life where you're away a lot, you're on the road a lot. I mean, your career necessitates you to be on the road.
Right.
How has that affected your friendships? More important, what have you done to maintain the closeness of those friendships with the crazy life that you live?
I believe in uranium-enriched friendships. That's how I think about it. So I think a friendship, I've tried to study friendships as much as I can, over the past I've really focused on it over the past 4 or 5 years. And I remember once I was in an interview and somebody said, hey, what's your goal? What's your dream? It was actually Forbes magazine. And I said, I would love to be successful, but I wish there was a top 10 list for somebody who has a friend's net worth. Because that's honestly what I'm trying to do. And maybe it's confirmation bias, but I find that answer, keeps coming back to me. I was on a trip to Greece a few years ago, and if you've ever been to any of these places where people are on boats and having a great time in the water, it hypnotizes you. And I turned to one of the Greek guys I was with and I said, Nick, if I was trying to get a boat, what boat should I get? And I'll never forget this. His friend jumped in and he said, Ella, Trevor, Ella, let me tell you something. The best boat is your friend's boat. And it was a joke that had so many layers to me, because the one was, it's true. It is, if you own a boat, there's a lot of stress. You don't want to own a boat unless you really love boats. But the thing I found profound was the fact that everybody who has a boat needs friends to be on that boat with them. And if everybody works to get the boat, no one has time to have friends to come on the boat with them. And every boat I know is full of friends who are on that boat.
Amen.
So,
Amen.
You know what I mean? It's like
And
So to answer your question, so what I've been doing is I recently got back. I just got back from Japan. We did a 10-day trip with 16 of my friends. That group has grown, and all I try to do it is so meticulous. It is meaningful. My friends sometimes get irritated with me because they go like, "Why are you so controlled about it?" And I go, "Because we have to work on our friendship. I know it seems like it's just going to happen, but we have to work on it. When are we having this dinner? We have a song that we sing, which is called "Are You Ready for the Question?" And we sing it maybe the 4th or 5th night of every hangout.
In the restaurant? You're at that table?
Yeah, we sing it. Are you ready for the question? Are you ready for the question? And then we ask ourselves a question that we've been struggling with, because you realize sometimes you can even become a superhero to your own friend group, and then you stop releasing or letting go or digging in or scraping away. And you'll find your friend will be sitting next to you laughing and going through the worst depression they've ever been through in their lives, until you say, hey, is everything okay? What are you struggling with? And then they open up and you go, why didn't you tell me? They go, because I didn't want to burden you. I love you as my friend. And so that's what I try to do more than anything in the world. That's my greatest joy.
That's such a common misunderstanding, Rich. I didn't want to burden you. I didn't want to bother you with my problems. And I think people don't realize that we don't build trust by offering help. We build trust by asking for it. And
whoa, say that again.
We don't build trust by offering help. We build trust by asking for it.
Damn.
And
why is that?
Because it's your example. And I'm sure everyone in this room has had this experience where someone was in pain, didn't call you for fear of bothering you or interrupting you. You're a busy person. and then you find out once they're okay, and again, I'll just speak from personal experience. A friend of mine went through something. He wasn't completely out of it, but he was doing better. And I'm like, haven't talked in a couple of weeks. And he sort of like slowly started to say, I've been struggling. And I said, why didn't you call me? He says, I didn't want to bother you. And my immediate reaction was, you asshole. How dare you be so selfish to deny me the honor of being there for you in your time of need.
Showing up for you.
And that's what it is. It's the incredible, that's when you know a friend is a friend, when it is an absolute honor to be there at the time they least want to call you.
Do you think that women have a better grasp of friendship than men?
100%. I think for that reason, women make better CEOs. I think I do. I mean, we've heard it from multiple female entrepreneurs on the stage today.
Yeah.
There is a better understanding of the human dynamic. Women come up to me more often than men, and they get my work much better. Men come up to me and ask for case studies.
That's interesting.
Men want me to prove that trusting people, loving people, taking care of people is a good thing for business. Women inherently understand that and make decisions accordingly. So yeah, I do think women are better at it. I think women are less afraid to say I love you to their friends too.
One of the, one of the conversations I had recently was about, the rise of the right in the world. And it's funny, we were talking to Anastasia yesterday about like the state of the world, I mean, there's so many things happening that you can't really call it the state of the world. But one of the big things I've been worried about recently is young men and how angry they've become, how alone they've become, how isolated they've become, and then ironically, how they've turned that anger, isolation into a community. And it's weird because it's literally, there's communities of young men online who have formed communities based in and around loneliness, based in and around anger, and they don't try and become, it's interesting that you're saying all these things, they don't try and become friends, they don't try and teach each other to hug and to love and to feel and know. They you know what I mean, they sort of foment these feelings and they go, this is why we should hate women, and this is why we should hate the government, and this is why we should hate society, and this is why we should hate, and I wonder if this world that you're speaking about, we're sort of seeing the effects of it now, is like men who haven't found anything beyond, someone said it earlier on stage today, it's just like men going, what am I beyond what I do? Because a lot of these men are unemployed, and who am I because of who I am around?
I mean, it's a huge insight. You asked before, what does this conversation have to do with the bigger world?
Yeah.
And I don't think I've ever heard a serious discussion about understanding a 20-something-year-old virgin who lives with their parents and without a job, and as it connects to global terrorism, or moving to violence to solve my problems, and especially if you come from a shame-based society. And when you find other people who are suffering what you're suffering, or who get you, it's incredibly compelling, and you feel seen and you feel understood. And the work of Dia Khan, the British documentarian, she talks about this. Whether you're talking about white supremacists or we're talking about jihadis, they are not driven by hate. They are driven by love, and her work is all about it. And this is what we don't understand, which is it's people who are missing love, desperately looking for love, and desperately looking for belonging. And when our nations don't provide us, this is getting into much sort of like, but when our leaders, and you and I have talked about this, which is, in the world today, I think there's been a total loss of idealism.
Yeah.
Our leaders used to talk about world peace and peace on earth. You and I having a conversation about world peace right now would sound cheesy and corny and weird. And I think there's been a loss of idealism. And when there's a loss of idealism and something to feel like we belong to larger than ourselves, larger than our nation, larger than the work that we do, if that's missing, we still look for that. We still look for that belonging, but unfortunately we find it down here.
Right.
And I think we're witnessing the loss of idealism in the world right now, how we're finding community at low levels and tearing each other apart.
Before we run out of time, there's one other thing I wanted to dig in, and learn from your mind. During Jay's presentation, it was really cool to see that moment where he asked the question. He said, what is the thing you wish you had done or you spent more time doing? And she said, I wish I'd spent more time with my friends. And that stuck with me. partially knowing what we're going to talk about in a way, but I was like, man, friends. And I've spoken to some of you in the audience here, by the way. I mean, some of the most successful people, venture capital, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and our parents and everything. And at some of the dinners, at some of the moments that we've had together, I've asked some of you, and I won't, single you out, but a lot of people have said, hey, and how's your friend group? And they go, oh man, I actually haven't seen my friends in a while, and I haven't, and you don't know. And do you think there is a way to find the balance between showing up as a family person, showing up as a mother, showing up as a father, showing up as, that nuclear unit, showing up as a CEO, showing up as a president, showing up? Do you think it's possible to show up in those worlds and then still make room for what society has deemed a nice to have? Because friendship is never seen as, the thing. Like, I came here last year with a friend as a +1, and I remember a few people like, who's this? And I was like, my friend. They're like, but what does he do? I was like, he's my friend. And they're like for a living? I was like, yeah, I'd like to think so. Yeah. And obviously he does things, but to me, he's my friend. I don't know what he does in that. Obviously I do, but I don't care. And I wonder if you think about that, for rooms like this, where people are so high-powered and so intense, and they focus and they go, family business. I hear a lot of people say that. I hear very people say, friends. I really, really work hard on my friendships. What do you say to that?
It is more amazing to have an amazing experience with someone than by yourself. You can go do it by yourself and say, look what I did, versus, do you remember that time we did that? And I think that especially for leaders, and I think leaders bear greater responsibility because people follow their leaders.
Yeah.
So goes the leader, so goes the organization. So goes the leader, so goes the country, always. So goes the parents, so go the children, right? Put your phones away. Mom and dad are on their phone the whole time at dinner, right? And I think if the leader publicly said, I just want everybody to know it's Monday, Friday I'm leaving a little early, it's my friend's birthday, and we're going to go celebrate, you'll find people prioritizing their friends more. I think it's a leadership problem.
I think it's something we all have to work on. And one other thing that I've realized in talking to people, just anecdotally, and then therapists who are really good studying in this space, is I think we shouldn't take for granted how much the abandoning or the ignoring of friendships has affected romantic relationships, because people have now shifted all of the expectation, all of the support, all of the the love that they got from a community of friends, and they've moved it on to one person. And a lot of I think there's a few studies that have actually shown even having a friend where you can talk shit about your partner too, which is healthy, by the way, actually improves your chances of staying with your partner.
Oof, I'm having an insight here. This is thank you for being the truffle pig and uncovering this magical little insight that the same thing is happening at work is happening in our relationships. So it used to be where we sort of had bowling leagues and we got our community from there. We got our sense of belief from church. Work was the place we made our living. We had barbecues with our neighbors. And over time, those things have disappeared. And now we demand of our work that you be the place of purpose. You be the place of community. You be the place of my social life. Now you be the place that matches my politics. We're putting all this pressure on work to fulfill every desire I have. And we're doing the exact same thing in our relationships, which is we seem to abandon those outside places, and we're asking of our partners to be everything all the time, always, which is an unreasonable and unfair standard to put on someone or be put on us.
I've never thought about it from the workplace as well, and that's why you're my favorite truffle pig. I know Anastasia has time to run, so I'll leave you with one thing that really, for me was perfectly apt for this conversation, and it's a saying that we have in South Africa in Zulu, which is umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu, which means a person is a person only because of the people. And I want to say that I'm genuinely a better person because of you, my friend. Thank you for being here with me. Thanks for sharing this with us. Appreciate it. Thank you.